Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. Mateo trudged down the dusty main street of his tiny rural hometown, his shoulders slouched and eyes downcast. He kept his gaze focused on the cracked sidewalk, trying to ignore the stares and snickers from the other kids loitering outside the general store. "Hey, pretty boy," Joey, the ringleader of Mateo's tormentors, called out in a mocking falsetto. "Heading to the beauty parlor again?" His posse of bullies guffawed as if it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Mateo clenched his fists but kept walking, determined not to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. At 16, Mateo had delicate, almost elfin features, high cheekbones, full lips, long lashes framing large hazel eyes. His slight build and graceful movements gave him an undeniably feminine air that made him stick out like a sore thumb among the rough-and-tumble boys in this narrow-minded little town. "Mateo, wait up!" A girl's voice rang out. He turned to see his best friend Lupe hurrying to catch up with him, her long black braid swinging. Lupe was the only person who really understood him. Like Mateo, she didn't quite fit the mold, a budding artist in a town that valued brawn over brains. "Ignore those imbeciles," Lupe said, glaring daggers at Joey and his crew as she fell into step beside Mateo. "They're just jealous because you're gorgeous, and they all look like the wrong end of a mule." A tiny smile tugged at Mateo's lips in spite of himself. "You always know how to cheer me up, Lupe. What would I do without you?" "Crash and burn, probably," she teased, bumping him with her shoulder. They continued on to school together, Lupe chattering on about her latest painting, while Mateo listened contentedly, feeling some of the heaviness lift from his heart. At least he had one true friend. But his momentary peace shattered as soon as they arrived at Piedmont High. The hallways were a gauntlet of taunts and cruel laughter. "Hey, Mateo, which bathroom you gonna use today? Boys or girls?" "Ooh, Mateo, I love your hair. What conditioner do you use?" "Better be careful, boys. Mateo might try to steal your girlfriends with that pretty face." Hot tears pricked Mateo's eyes, but he blinked them back furiously. He wouldn't cry in front of these hyenas. Lupe grabbed his hand and shot the bullies a withering look as she pulled Mateo into their first period English class. "One day you'll be far away from this bigoted little town, wowing the world with your unique talents," she whispered fiercely as they slid into their seats. "And these losers will all be stuck here, watching you on TV and wishing they'd been nicer to you." Mateo squeezed her hand gratefully, drawing strength from her faith in him. If Lupe believed in him, maybe he could believe in himself too. Miss Alvarez, the young English teacher, called the class to order. Today they were starting a unit on poetry. Mateo sat up straighter, his interest piqued. He loved stringing words together, painting vivid pictures and deep emotions with lyrical language. It was the one place he felt he could truly express himself. "Your assignment is to write a poem about an experience that has shaped you," Miss Alvarez explained. "Don't hold back. Pour your heart and soul onto the page. The best poem will be submitted to the county literary magazine." Mateo could hardly wait to get started. As soon as the bell rang, he fled to his favorite refuge, the school library. Tucked away in the stacks, he pulled out his notebook and let the words flow, writing about the pain of being different in a sea of sameness, the fear of letting his true self shine, the desperate yearning to be accepted for who he was. Poem after poem poured out of him, his pen flying across the page. He wrote until the final bell rang and Lupe came to collect him. "There you are. I should have known," she said with a knowing smile. "Come on, I'll walk you home." Lost in a haze of creative euphoria, Mateo barely noticed the usual barrage of insults from Joey and his minions as he and Lupe left the school grounds. Let them laugh. His poetry was going to be his ticket out of this dead-end town. He could feel it in his bones. But Mateo's contented bubble burst as soon as he walked through his front door. His father Ernesto was waiting for him, arms crossed and face like thunder. Mateo's heart sank. What had he done wrong now? Mijo, this has gone on long enough, Ernesto said gruffly. I got a call from the school. Your math teacher says you're failing because you spend all your time scribbling in that damn notebook instead of paying attention. Papa, I'm sorry. I'll try harder, I swear, Mateo stammered. It's just, writing helps me cope with everything. Cope with what? Being a loser? Damn it, Mateo, when are you going to man up? His father's words cut like a knife. No son of mine is going to be some artsy-fartsy poofter. You're coming to work with me at the garage this weekend, and I don't want to hear any arguments. It's time you learned how to get your hands dirty like a real man. Too exhausted to fight, Mateo simply nodded, defeated. Satisfied, his father stomped off to crack open a beer in front of the TV. Holding back tears, Mateo retreated to his room and threw himself on the bed. He wanted so desperately to please his papa, to be the macho hijo he wanted. But trying to change his essential nature was like trying to squeeze into shoes 3 sizes too small. It went against every fiber of his being. Needing to express the ache in his soul, Mateo pulled out his notebook and started to write again, pouring his heart onto the page. Trapped in this skin that doesn't fit, a delicate fox in a world of bulls, struggling not to shatter to bits under the weight of expectations and ridicule, dreaming of a place where I can breathe free, unchained from narrow confines of masculinity, to express my truth for all to see, and finally, make peace with the person I'm meant to be. Mateo read over the poem, tears sliding down his cheeks. Then, with shaking hands, he tore it out and crumpled it into a tight ball before tossing it into the wastepaper basket. Maybe Papa was right. Maybe he needed to stop dreaming and just accept his lot in life. Be a man, whatever that meant. Shoving his notebook under the bed where he couldn't be tempted, Mateo scrubbed the tears from his face and headed out to face another day of putting on an ill-fitting macho mask. As much as it broke Lupe's heart, she could only watch helplessly as Mateo's vibrant spirit dimmed a little more each day under the crushing pressure to conform. He started skipping their lunches in the library to throw a football around with the guys. He tossed his beloved poetry books in favor of car magazines. He even tried flirting clumsily with a few girls. But Lupe saw the dull misery in his eyes when he thought nobody was looking. She knew this smiling, swaggering bro dude was just an empty husk, a poor mimic of what the world told him he should be. Then came the terrible day when Miss Alvarez held Mateo after class, concern etched on her face. Mateo, I couldn't help but notice your poetry has changed, drastically. All the honesty and emotion is gone, replaced with shallow, derivative verses. This isn't like you. Is everything okay? Mateo shrugged dully. I guess I just lost interest in all that flowery junk. I got more important stuff to worry about now. You know, guy stuff. Miss Alvarez's heart broke for him. Oh, Mateo, never be ashamed of your gift. Your sensitivity, your expressiveness, those aren't girl things. They're what make you beautifully, uniquely you. Mateo blinked rapidly and turned away to hide the sudden sheen of tears in his eyes. For a moment, his mask cracked and Lupe glimpsed the lost, hurting boy underneath. Then he squared his shoulders and reformed his carefully blank expression. Thanks, Miss A, but I gotta go. Got football tryouts. He rushed out before she could say another word. Mateo trudged through the front door, his body aching from football tryouts, but his heart heavy with an even deeper pain. He'd made the JV team, but it brought him no joy. All he felt was a yawning emptiness inside. He found his mom Elena in the kitchen, slicing vegetables for dinner. She looked up, her warm brown eyes crinkling in a smile when she saw him. Mijo, how did it go? Mateo shrugged listlessly. I made the team, he mumbled, slumping into a chair at the kitchen table. That's wonderful, Mateo. Your father will be so proud, Elena exclaimed. But then she paused, taking in her son's downcast face and slumped posture. Why don't you seem happy about it? She asked gently, putting down her knife and coming to sit beside him. The tenderness in her voice was Mateo's undoing. To his horror, he felt hot tears welling up and spilling down his cheeks. He dashed them away angrily, embarrassed to be crying like a little kid. But Elena simply reached out and pulled him into her arms, stroking his hair soothingly. "Oh, my sweet boy, what's troubling you? You know you can tell me anything." Mateo buried his face in his mother's shoulder, allowing himself to be comforted by her familiar scent of lavender and baking bread. "Mama, I don't know how to be the son Papa wants," he choked out. "I try so hard, but it's just not me. I feel like I'm dying inside, pretending to be somebody I'm not." Elena's heart ached for her sensitive, tender-hearted son. She'd seen how Ernesto and the other men in town mocked Mateo for his gentle nature, his love of poetry and beauty. It tore her apart to watch him wilt under the constant pressure to man up. She pulled back to look Mateo in the face, cupping his tear-stained cheeks in her hands. "Mijo, listen to me. There is nothing wrong with who you are. You have a beautiful soul and a rare gift with words. Don't let anyone convince you that you need to change to be worthy of love." Mateo sniffled, his red-rimmed hazel eyes searching his mother's face. But what about Papa? He's so ashamed of me." Elena sighed, her own eyes misting over. She loved her husband, but his rigid ideas about masculinity broke her heart. "Your father, he means well, but he doesn't understand you like I do. He grew up in a different time, a different world. But I know the man you are inside, Mateo. And you are absolutely perfect, exactly as you are." She smoothed a lock of hair off his forehead, smiling mistily. "You know, when you were a little boy, you used to love dressing up in my clothes and jewelry. You'd twirl around in my skirts for hours, beaming with joy. It was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. You were so free and unself-conscious then, just radiantly happy being you." Mateo gulped, fresh tears trickling down his cheeks at the bittersweet memory. He remembered those dress-up sessions with an almost visceral ache, recalling how right and natural it had felt to express his femininity. Before the world taught him it was something to be ashamed of. "I miss feeling that way," he whispered hoarsely. "Like I could just be myself without constantly checking over my shoulder, paranoid that I'm not acting manly enough. I'm so tired, Mama. Tired of hiding, tired of squeezing myself into this painful mold." "Then stop, mijo," Elena said simply, squeezing his shoulders. "Stop contorting yourself and let yourself breathe again. Rediscover what makes your soul sing." She stood up and crossed the room to rummage in a drawer, pulling out a familiar leather-bound journal, Mateo's poetry notebook, the one he'd asked her to hide weeks ago when he'd given up writing. Elena pressed it into his hands, her eyes shining with fierce love and pride. "Start with this. Write, Mateo. Pour out your truth onto the page like you used to. Don't edit yourself, don't hold back. Just let it flow and see where it takes you." Mateo clutched the journal to his chest like a lifeline, tears of relief and gratitude streaming down his face. "Thank you, Mama," he said shakily, "for seeing me, for believing in me even when I don't believe in myself." Elena folded him into another hug, holding him close. "Always, Mijo. I will always be in your corner." Sniffling, Mateo wiped his face and managed a tremulous smile. He carried the journal up to his room, his heart fluttering with nervous excitement. Sitting cross-legged on his bed, he cracked it open, picked up a pen, and let himself bleed onto the page for the first time in far too long. The words poured out of him in a cleansing torrent, all the pent-up feelings he'd been choking back for months. He wrote about the exquisite agony of smothering his true self, the desperation to please his father warring with the bone-deep knowledge that he could never be the macho man Ernesto wanted. He wrote about feeling alien in his own skin, like a delicate bird trapped in the body of a lumbering bear. About the craving to express his femininity that ached like a phantom limb, the dizzying whiplash of acting like a man all day and then catching a glimpse of himself in the mirror and startling at the disconnect between his outside and his inside. Mateo wrote until his hand cramped and tears blurred the words on the page. But for the first time in a long time, they were tears of relief rather than anguish. He felt lighter, liberated, purged of the toxic shame that had been poisoning him from the inside out. For hours, he poured his deepest truths into that notebook, filling it with raw, vulnerable verses, each one bringing him a step closer to reclaiming himself. By the time the sun started to sink and his mother called him for dinner, Mateo felt like he'd shed a 1,000-pound weight from his shoulders. He bounded downstairs, eyes alight with renewed purpose. Elena took one look at his face and felt her heart swell with joy. There was her Mateo, her real Mateo, vibrant and unafraid. She wasn't naive enough to think one cathartic journaling session could undo years of repression, but it was a powerful first step. Thankfully, Ernesto was working late at the garage, so Mateo was able to enjoy a peaceful meal with his mother without needing to maintain his macho facade. He told Elena excitedly about some of the new poems taking shape in his mind, and she listened raptly, marveling at the way his whole being seemed to glow as he spoke about his writing. "You're in your element, mijo," she said warmly as they cleared the dishes together. "This is what you're meant to do. Never let anyone convince you otherwise, not even your father. Shine on, my brilliant boy." Over the next several days, a shift began to take place in Mateo. Tentatively at first, and then with more conviction, he started allowing his authentic self to peek through again. He let himself get lost in his poetry at lunch instead of forcing himself to talk sports with the guys. He started wearing the colorful, expressive clothes he'd previously shoved to the back of his closet. He turned down invitations to parties and pickup games in favor of quiet writing sessions in his room or the library. One evening, a few weeks into this new chapter, Mateo asked Elena to join him in his room after dinner. She found him sitting on the bed, clutching his notebook to his chest, his eyes bright with an exhilarated sort of nervousness she'd never seen before. "What is it, mijo?" she asked, perching on the edge of the bed. "You look like you're about to burst." Mateo took a deep breath, his hands shaking slightly around the journal.
"Mama, I've been doing a lot of soul-searching since our talk in the kitchen that day. And I've realized some things about myself. Things I'm finally ready to face." Elena reached out to lay a steadying hand over his, sensing that he needed her support to get through this. She had an inkling of where this might be going, but she stayed quiet, giving Mateo the space to find his words. He swallowed hard, his eyes shimmering with mingled fear and conviction. "I've always known I was different, that I didn't fit in with the other boys. And I'm starting to understand why. Mama, I think I'm meant to express myself in a more feminine way. Inside, I feel like a girl." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with significance. Mateo held his breath, heart pounding violently as he searched his mother's face for her reaction. Elena simply leaned forward and gathered him into a warm, tight embrace, tears sparkling on her lashes. "Oh, Mateo, my beautiful child. I love you exactly as you are, mijo. Or should I say, mija." At that single word of validation, years of repressed emotion burst out of Mateo in a kaleidoscope of tears and laughter. He clung to his mother as violent sobs of relief racked his slender frame, amazed and disbelieving that the secret he'd guarded so fiercely had been met with such easy acceptance. "Mija," he repeated wonderingly through his tears, testing the word, the truth, on his tongue. It felt like cool rain after a parched season, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering in the wilderness. "Yes, Mama, your daughter. That's who I am." They held each other and wept, Elena murmuring fierce mother love into her child's hair. There would be challenges ahead, uncharted territory to navigate, not least helping Ernesto understand. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Mateo had taken the most pivotal step towards honesty, towards self-acceptance, towards the woman she'd always been but never felt safe becoming.
When at last their tears were spent, Elena pulled back to cup her daughter's face in her hands, thumbing away the last of the moisture on her cheeks. Her smile was radiant, joyful, as if she was truly seeing her child for the first time. "My daughter," she said softly, reverently. "I am so, so proud of you, and I will be right by your side no matter what, supporting you and fighting for you as you step into your truth. We'll take it one day at a time, see? Poco a poco, as they say." Matteo. No, not Matteo anymore. She needed a new name. Nodded, a shaky but genuine smile blooming across her face. "I like that. Poco a poco, little by little." She took a deep breath, feeling simultaneously emotionally flayed and buoyantly free. I think I want to go by Marisol. That was Abuela's name, right? Before she passed?" "Yes, mija, Marisol Esperanza. She was a lot like you, a free spirit, an old soul, a gentle warrior of a woman. She would be so proud her name will live on in you." Elena traced her fingers delicately over her daughter's face as if committing it to memory. "Marisol, it suits you." Marisol beamed, a single happy tear escaping down her cheek. "A new name for a new chapter," she said with a wet laugh. Then, sobering, "I'm scared, Mama. The world isn't always kind to people like me." "I know. Believe me, I know." Elena sighed, her eyes darkening with memories of the bigotry and closed-mindedness she'd witnessed. "But you have something that will see you through anything. A mother's love and your own lion heart." Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.